Is the Samsung Galaxy A71 worth buying in late 2020? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, and this is the Samsung Galaxy A71. Now this phone was launched in January of 2020, so at this point, now that we're in late September, the phone is roughly 9 months old. Now typically, with the way things are with smartphones, after about 9 months, phones kind of become irrelevant. But for the A71, things have certainly not played out that way. This phone was a great option when it was first launched, and still, even now, later in 2020, this phone is a very good option. Now, the A71 was never officially launched in the US. However, there is a 5G variant called the Galaxy A71 5G that is offered on different US carriers, and you can also get it factory unlocked officially in the US. Now, with that being said, you can buy the international Galaxy A71 from Amazon and eBay, and I will be leaving a link in the video description to where you can see the most up-to-date pricing. But in this video, I really want to go over the benefits of this device and what really makes it stand out at this point to make the phone a decent option. Now, the biggest standout feature for me certainly has to be the display. Now, with the Samsung Galaxy A71, we're getting a very large display here with the phone. In fact, the size of the actual device itself is actually pretty similar to the Note 20 Ultra. The display is only slightly smaller at 6.7 inches. But nowadays, people are using their smartphones more and more for content consumption, whether that's watching videos, going on social media, or browsing the web. If you're like me, you probably don't even use your phone too often to actually do phone calls. Or if you are going to be doing a call, then it's more than likely over video chat. Now, if you are going to use the phone for standard calls, it does work completely fine. But my point is that with this very large, good-looking display, which is Super AMOLED by the way, this phone is excellent for content consumption. Now, the display itself, in addition to being Super AMOLED, it's also 1080p. We're getting a PPI of 393, and we're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio. So a more narrow but taller form factor here with the phone. Now, another cool thing about the A71 is that the design of the device is actually very similar to many other higher-end Samsung flagships. For example, just like the Note 20 Ultra and the S20 Ultra, we're getting very small bezels all around, and we're also getting a hole punch for the front-facing camera located at the top center of the phone. So at least by looking at this device straight on, it does look like one of the top offerings from Samsung. Now, as far as the other build quality materials go, such as having a plastic band around the sides and Glastic on the back, which is essentially like a glassy plastic, but the reality is that this is actually plastic. You know, those materials are not necessarily that premium, but most people tend to put their smartphones in a case. So whether your phone's made out of metal, glass, maybe a combination of the two, or made out of plastic, you're gonna have pretty much the same experience if the phone is in a plastic case. Now, the good news though is that the phone itself is very solid. You can't really bend it or anything. It doesn't make any creaking sounds. So that certainly is excellent as well. So from a quality standpoint, Samsung did do a really good job with this phone. Now, if you are in the US, as I mentioned earlier, the phone never was officially launched in the US. Of course, you can get it on Amazon, which is great. Certainly very convenient there. But you can actually use the phone with pretty much any carrier nowadays in the US. Definitely with T-Mobile and AT&T. You're not gonna have any issues at all with the device. And I've also seen a lot of people comment on my videos mentioning that Verizon works with the phone as well. So if you do wanna go for the A71 5G instead, you likely will be getting a little bit more US compatibility. But if you especially live in a bigger city, then you're not going to have any issues at all with using a US carrier with this international device. Now, on the backside of the Samsung Galaxy A71, we do have a quad camera setup. So we have a 64 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. Now the first thing is that the depth sensing camera really is pretty redundant because phones like the Pixel 4a, for example, only have one camera, but at the same time is able to offer really good portrait mode. And then for the macro camera, which we have here on the phone, that's pretty cool, but again, that can mostly be replicated with the main camera. For example, here's the standard camera on the phone. We're gonna take a photo of this remote very close up. So this is probably about the closest I can get while still keeping everything in focus. So there we go. And then going over to the macro camera, let's get focused in on one of the buttons at the top. So it looks like the closest that we can get is about right here. Okay. Let's take a look at the results. So this is with the macro camera. So no doubt you can get very close with that camera. And then we'll take a look at the other photo that was taken with the main camera. Now this photo is not as close as this photo, but since the main camera is 64 megapixels, you can just crop in and things look very clear here. And then going back to the macro photo, you can see that the quality is actually lower than if you're just to use the main camera and crop in. So really, the macro camera is pretty pointless as well. So I did have a few people ask me, then what's the purpose of having the depth sensing camera? And then really what's the purpose of having the macro camera if you can do the same thing with the main camera? And it really comes down to marketing. Samsung gave this phone 4 cameras so that they can advertise it as having a quad camera setup. While in reality, you can accomplish what these 4 cameras can do for you really with just the main camera and the ultra wide camera. So I want to make that clear. But despite that, the results are still nice. Definitely with the ultra wide angle camera, having that is certainly a great feature. It's not gimmicky at all. And you do need a camera that is truly an ultra wide angle camera to be able to take ultra wide photos. So this phone is pretty competitive against the Pixel 4a, at least when it comes to the price range that it is in. But with the 4a, you are going to get way better quality with the rear camera, at least for the main camera. And then with the A71, the main camera is not quite as good as the Pixel 4a, but on the other hand, you do gain that ultra wide angle camera, which I think certainly offers quite a few benefits there. And then for the front-facing camera, it is 32 megapixels. So you are able to take pretty nice looking front-facing photos here. So that definitely does work. Now with the A71, we're getting 128 gigs of internal storage. Totally fine at this point. We're also getting micro SD card expansion, which is wonderful. With the phone, we do get an in-display fingerprint sensor, which is pretty cool. I don't think it really helps you get into your phone faster compared to having a fingerprint sensor on the power button or the backside of the phone. But if you do want a device with more of a modern approach to getting into it, then the A71 does have that in-display fingerprint sensor. It is certainly a bit slower than some of the flagships though from Samsung. And then with the phone, we're getting 6 gigabytes of RAM and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 730 processor. So I did run a benchmark test here with the phone using Geekbench 5. So I recommend installing Geekbench 5 on your current device and then taking a look at the scores that you're able to get and then compare those scores to these scores to really see if the A71 is going to be a performance upgrade for you. But you can see with the Samsung Galaxy A71, I got a single core score of 547 and a multi-core score of 1737. So again, compare that to your current device to really see how much of an upgrade this phone truly will be. But in my experience, the 730 is pretty solid. The Pixel 4a does have the 730G, which is a little bit better, but the regular 730 certainly is fine as well. Now with this phone, we are getting 4K video recording, which is pretty interesting too. So if you do want to take nice, good quality 4K videos, you can certainly do that here with this phone. Now as far as the battery capacity goes, with the A71, we're getting a pretty beefy 4,500 milliamp hour internal battery. But another cool thing too with this device is that we are getting 25 watt fast charging. So certainly having fast charging is a great thing to have. And then at 25 watts, that is pretty quick as well. Now this phone has continued to get a variety of different software updates ever since I did get it back in January. The phone does still have Android 10 with Samsung's One UI 2.0, but I have been getting security patches on a regular basis, which has certainly been keeping this phone nice and fresh. Now looking into the future, Samsung has pledged to give their A series devices at least one additional major software update. So that would take this phone over to Android 11, but with the way things are going, I wouldn't be too surprised either if they do give this device Android 12 at some point. So really, from a specification standpoint, this phone is still very competitive. I feel like when it was first launched, this phone was really a great deal. So Samsung was really already ahead of things with launching a very solid device back in January that at this point later on in 2020, the A71 is still super solid. Now again, I did talk a bit already about the build quality. I don't really care about that personally because again, the actual phone is very solid, but at the same time, the majority of people out there are going to be using this phone on a day-to-day basis with the case installed, or at least that's what I recommend doing. So if you do put this phone in a case, then you won't really be reminded every day on the fact that we have a plastic build here. But we do get a 3.5mm headphone jack, pretty common with every A-series phone. We have a USB-C port for charging and data transfer, a microphone and speaker. Then up top, the noise-canceling microphone, and then on the right, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Another cool thing about the A71, since it is an international device, we do have dual SIM support, which is pretty awesome. Then on the right side of the phone, we have the power button and volume button. And then on the back, we do have this glass-stick material that picks up a bunch of fingerprints. And then we have the camera module. So to finish off this video on whether or not the A71 is still worth getting at this point in late 2020, I would say that it is. Really, the only other devices, if you want to get a brand new device that would tempt me to choose something else besides this phone in this price range, would be the Pixel 4a, as the cameras are just so good with that phone that it really does offer something very unique. The TCL 10 Pro is pretty good as well. However, you are going to be getting a much better display here with the A71. And I also like the Moto G Stylus too, but again, that phone has an LCD display, and this AMOLED display with the A71 is so much better. So really, I feel like the display is what makes this phone really stand out from the very competitive competition out there, especially right now in this price range. And you could get the A71 5G, but it is going to be extra money. And with that phone, even if you don't care about 5G, you are still going to be getting a better processor and better build materials. But I feel like the A71 is such a well-rounded device that it is extremely competitive even at this point. But if you have anything else to add to my analysis about the Samsung Galaxy A71 in late 2020, please let me know in the comment section below. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. This is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next video.